I heard my son's voice before I saw him. Low, casual, the way people talk when they think the person they're betraying isn't listening. "She'll move or die soon," he told the realtor, and his wife laughed like it was a punchline. I stood in my garden, pruning shears trembling in my hand, the scent of cut lavender turning sour in my throat. They thought I'd leave quietly. They forgot who taught him how to fight for a home. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The late afternoon sun flared off the edge of Linda's mailbox as she turned toward her porch, a shallow ache in her wrists from pruning the hedges. A breeze lifted the scent of damp earth and clipped lavender. She was just reaching for the garden hose when she heard a laugh. Deep, masculine, a little smug, float from the front porch next door. Troy. She instinctively stilled, fingers still curled around the brass faucet. A woman's voice followed, lighter, lilting with that false sweetness Linda had come to recognize as Aubrey's. They weren't alone. "She'll move or die soon. Either way, we'll expand." The words landed hard. Troy's voice. Easy. Unbothered. As if they weren't talking about a human being but a rotted fence panel they couldn't wait to tear down. Linda turned slightly, careful not to rustle the ivy trailing up the trellis. Her garden wall sat low between the two properties, just enough to shield her if she stayed crouched. Water hissed quietly through the hose as she angled the spray toward her dahlias, heart climbing steadily in her throat. "She's holding out," Aubrey said with an edge of irritation. "But that house is an eyesore next to ours. You saw the cracked shutters, right? And that weird metal rooster thing in the yard?" Troy snorted. "Junkyard chic." A third voice chimed in, crisp and polished. Kara, the real estate agent who had been hovering like a buzzard since the Wilkins property sold 2 doors down. Linda peeked through a gap in the ivy and caught a glimpse of Kara's oversized sunglasses and mauve power suit, one hand clutching a property folder, the other balancing a plastic cup of iced tea. Then Kara's head turned slightly. Her gaze flicked toward the garden. Linda felt it like a laser across her skin. "She's right there," Kara murmured. Aubrey made a small, sharp sound and shifted on the porch swing. "God, how long has she been out there?" "Long enough," Kara muttered. Linda straightened slowly, cool water trailing from the hose and darkening the concrete underfoot. Her spine was rigid, her chest tight. But her face stayed blank, a trick she'd learned after the divorce, after the hospice years, after every neighbor who stopped smiling once they thought she had nothing left to lose. She wound the hose back into place, turned off the faucet, and walked back inside without a word. The door clicked shut, behind her. Inside, the house was cool, shadowed. The photos on the fireplace mantel seemed to stare down in silent witness. Linda pressed her palms to the edge of the kitchen sink and breathed. Her heartbeat felt like thunder in her jaw. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She stood very still and listened, to the old refrigerator hum, to the wind sliding dry leaves across the porch, to the low murmur of her so-called neighbors resuming their scheming just a few feet away. Then footsteps behind her. "I always knew those two were snakes," Doris said with a short laugh, leaning on her cane as she shuffled into the kitchen from the back hallway. Her robe was inside out again, and she had a half-eaten cookie in one hand. Linda turned. "You heard? I was halfway through Jeopardy when that vulture's voice hit my ears." Doris narrowed her eyes. "They think they can push you out?" Linda said nothing, but her knuckles whitened on the counter. Doris raised her cookie like a toast. "Let them try." Linda didn't smile, but she nodded. Once. Slow. Measured. Her pulse had stopped racing. Outside, the swing on Troy and Aubrey's porch creaked gently, as if it had overheard everything, too. End of section. Cliffhanger hook. Linda turned to the drawer beside the stove, the one no one ever opened, and pulled it slowly open. The hinges creaked. Inside, something glinted under a faded dish towel. She stared down at it for a long, still moment, then closed the drawer again. Fade to black. Linda found the flyer tucked under her doormat the next morning. Slick, trifold, all clean lines and euphemisms. Coming soon. Luxury opportunity in prime location. The photo was unmistakable. The house next door. The one Troy and Aubrey had bought just 6 months ago. The duplex they claimed they'd keep as long-term rentals for good neighbors. She stood on her porch in her robe, the chill still in the boards under her feet, as she read the fine print. 2 units. Updated interiors. Perfect for high-yield short-term income. Her eyes narrowed. Down the path came Kara in her stacked heels, a thermos of something iced in hand and a clipboard tucked under one arm. She offered a brittle smile, like someone trying to sell peace at a crime scene. "I figured you'd see it before I had a chance to say anything," Kara said, pausing at the edge of the walkway. "I was going to knock." Linda didn't reply. She flipped the flyer over. "It's happening fast," Kara continued, as if speed was some kind of apology. "Troy's pushing hard to get it listed before Halloween. Wants the tenants out by next week. He just rented that place out. Doesn't matter. Month-to-month lease. He'll offer them a buyout or force it. It's legal, but..." Kara exhaled slowly. "It's rotten." Linda raised her eyes. "And you're handling the sale?" Kara hesitated, suddenly looking less glossy. "I told him I'd put feelers out. Not listed officially. Yet. You know how this market is." Linda's voice was even. "What's he asking?" Kara blinked. "Why?" "Because you're standing in my garden at 8:30 in the morning telling me the man who joked about my death yesterday is trying to vacuum up the neighborhood like it's a strip mall. So I'm asking what he wants." Kara shifted, thumbed through the folder and passed over a spec sheet. "450. Needs some cosmetic work. Honestly, for a duplex on this block, he's underpricing it to move fast." Linda scanned it. 450 wasn't cheap, but it wasn't impossible. Not if she moved the right pieces. Not if she treated this like a chess game, not a loss. Kara glanced up at the house behind her. "If I didn't know better, I'd say you were thinking about buying it yourself." Linda folded the paper crisply and looked her square in the eye. "Don't mistake quiet for surrender, Kara." Then she turned and walked back inside. The living room still smelled faintly of toast and wood polish. Doris was asleep in her recliner, snoring softly with her crossword open on her lap. The quiet buzz of the TV rolled on, some old courtroom rerun with too much dramatic music. Linda went straight to the study. She hadn't used her desktop in months. The monitor blinked awake reluctantly, the same way she had this past year. Slow, unsure, but with just enough left to get going. Her hand hovered over the mouse, then moved to her favorite's bar. Matt Goldman, attorney at law. A man she'd trusted for decades, who'd helped with her will, the guardianship paperwork for Doris, and the tangle of medical bills after the cancer years. She clicked contact and typed quickly. Subject: investment property, Matt. Quick question. What's the process for buying a duplex as an investment? Can we talk this week? She paused, added. Also, what kind of LLC options do I have if I don't want my name on public record? Send. Less than 20 minutes later, her phone buzzed. Matt. You really want to do this? She stared at the screen. The cursor blinked in her reply window. Her thumb hovered, then typed. Yes. I'm done letting people take things from me. She stared at that line, then deleted it. Typed again. I think it's time. Send. Troy's truck pulled into the driveway just after noon, engine grumbling like a warning. Linda stood behind the shears in the front window, watching as he jumped down. All business. Tight jeans, pressed shirt, Bluetooth in one ear like he was born important. He slammed the door and strode toward Kara's Lexus, holding a thick manila envelope in one hand. He didn't knock. He walked in. Linda's fingers tightened around her teacup. It wasn't fear. Not anymore. It was something sharper, cooler. A precision that had returned to her lately, like muscle memory after too much rest. Across the hedgerow, Doris muttered, "He struts like a rooster before the axe." Linda didn't smile. She was already turning away. It was nearly 4 when Kara showed up again. No clipboard this time. No smile either. Linda opened the door just enough to keep the heat out. "So?" Kara's sunglasses reflected Linda's face back at her. Flat, unreadable, but her voice had softened. "You're one day too late." Linda's chest tightened. "He submitted a full cash offer this morning. No inspection, no financing. Said he'd have the place gutted by November." Silence. Then Kara added, "Unless—" Linda stepped fully out onto the porch, her jaw clenched. "Unless what?" "Unless you give me something they can't. A reason. A story." Kara hesitated. "The seller's not just an investor. He's a retired high school teacher from upstate. Doesn't have to go with Troy, but it would take more than a few extra bucks." Linda crossed her arms, staring at the peeling paint on her porch rail. "What kind of reason?" Kara's voice lowered. "Something real." Back inside, Linda typed with a steadiness she hadn't felt in years. "Dear Mr. Anderson, I doubt you remember me, but I remember you. You taught English at Eastfield High in the late 1980s. I was in your second period class, back when this neighborhood was full of teachers, nurses, union workers, before the home flippers and their Airbnbs moved in." Her fingers hesitated for only a second before continuing. "I live next door to the property you're selling. I've lived here for 34 years. I raised a family here. I buried a husband here. I care about this street more than most would understand. You taught us that a good story needs conflict, but also justice. This is me, asking for a little of that." She signed it simply. Linda Harper. Attached to the offer was an all-cash bid, $5,000 over Troy's. No contingencies, no inspections, just clean numbers and a quiet woman's name behind them. Kara called the next morning. No small talk. "They picked you." Silence on Linda's end. Not out of shock, out of strategy. Kara added, "He remembered you. Said you wrote a short story in his class about a woman digging her way out of a flood with her bare hands. Said he still tells students about it." Linda closed her eyes. That old, brittle pride stirred. The version of herself that had been buried under mortgages, pills, chemo reports, loss. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear. "Did Troy find out yet?" Kara gave a small, wry laugh. "He's going to flip." Pun intended. Linda hung up without saying goodbye. The courthouse smelled faintly of lemon polish and old air conditioning. Linda sat in a high-backed chair beside Matt Goldman, her fingers ink-smudged from the dozen signatures she'd already laid down. The last page of the packet trembled slightly as she pressed the pen to it, not from nerves, but from something deeper, something ancient, possession, the act of reclaiming ground that had once felt permanently lost. Matt slid the packet toward the notary and leaned back. "Well," he said, adjusting his cufflinks, "you now officially own more real estate on this block than anyone but God." Linda didn't smile, but her eyes crinkled at the edges. Matt raised a brow. "You know, you could have bought a condo in Florida instead." Linda's voice was quiet but unshaken. "I don't want sunshine. I want leverage." Matt chuckled under his breath and stood. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." It was dusk when Kara arrived at her door with a ring of keys and a red file folder tucked under one arm. Her sunglasses were gone, her lipstick a little faded, but the smile she offered this time was real. "Congratulations," she said, handing over the keys. The cool weight of the metal settled into Linda's palm like a gavel. "I have to admit," Kara added, glancing over her shoulder toward the house next door. "That was the slickest move I've seen this year." Linda said nothing. Just stepped aside to let her in. They walked together to the duplex, Linda's duplex now, and Kara handed off the papers. "Locks are new. Utilities are under your LLC. Everything's clean. You want me to recommend a contractor for the kitchen?" "I'll take care of it," Linda said. Just then, gravel crunched behind them. Troy's truck screeched into his driveway, door flying open before the engine even cut off. He stormed across the grass in boots that left ugly divots. "You! Seriously?" His voice was sharp, all disbelief and outrage, like the universe had broken some unspoken code. Linda turned slowly. The sunset caught the copper threads in her hair, lit the calm steel in her eyes. "Surprise," she said flatly. Troy's face colored. "This was my deal. I brought Kara in. I had the offer in first." Linda arched an eyebrow. "You did, and you still lost." Aubrey appeared at the porch, barefoot and already holding a glass of wine, her hair in curlers and a little too much panic in her eyes. "You really think this is cute?" she called. "You're screwing with the whole neighborhood's property values." Linda turned to her without blinking. "Then I guess you'd better get used to mine going up." Aubrey's jaw dropped open. "What is wrong with you?" Linda stepped forward and tucked the keys into her back pocket. "I stopped letting people walk all over me. That's all." By the end of the week, the first security camera went up. Then the second. Then the reinforced side gate. Thick cedar, with a deadbolt Troy could practically see from his window. Linda didn't ask for permission. She didn't explain. Doris sat on the porch one morning, sipping orange juice and watching the crew pour cement for the new fencing posts. "You gonna put in motion lights too?" Linda didn't look up from her notepad. "Already ordered." Doris snorted. "You're my favorite person alive." The letter came in an unmarked envelope, slipped under Linda's storm door while she was upstairs folding laundry. No stamp, no return address. Just thick, off-white paper and a single line typed in the middle of the page. "Back off or regret it." No signature, no context, but the intent bled through every word like oil through linen. She stared at it for a long moment, then laid it flat on the kitchen table and called Matt. "You keep it?" Matt asked, later that afternoon in his office. He slid on a pair of reading glasses and examined the letter through a plastic sleeve Linda had tucked it into. "Of course," she said. Matt gave a small nod. "Threats like this are rarely stupid enough to be actionable, but they do paint a story if something escalates. Start documenting everything. Dates, times, screenshots. Assume nothing is too small." "I already installed the cameras," Linda said quietly. Matt looked up at her. "Then you're one step ahead. Just don't let pride keep you from calling the police if this goes from petty to criminal." Linda didn't answer. Her silence was its own shape. Across the hedge, things were shifting. Troy had stopped pretending to be neighborly. Instead, he paced his property like it was contested land. His voice was sharper with the tenants in his rental. Two single moms who lived upstairs and downstairs in the duplex next to Linda's. She'd watched him more than once now, leaning too close during conversations, gesturing too broadly, like a man trying to scare a dog off his lawn without saying the words. "Just saying," he said one afternoon to the woman with the toddler and the car seat. "You might want to start looking early. This market's gonna flip quick." Linda heard it from her porch. That same evening, she baked banana bread and brought it across the yard. The woman who opened the downstairs door looked cautious, eyes darting to the street behind Linda before meeting her gaze. She had a face full of stress lines and a baby monitor in one hand. "I'm Linda," she said simply. "I own the building now." The woman blinked. "Oh, I thought Troy said—" "I know what Troy said," Linda replied, holding out the foil-wrapped bread. "He doesn't own it anymore. You're safe." The woman hesitated, then accepted the bread. I'm Jenna. Upstairs is Myra. We both work late, so we kind of trade off with the kids. Linda nodded. Listen, I'm lowering the rent. 200 off, effective next month. Jenna blinked. You're... what? Linda shrugged. To keep good people in the neighborhood? There was silence. Long, fragile. And then Jenna's face crumpled. She turned half away and wiped at her eyes with the hem of her sleeve. No one does that, she said, her voice breaking. Maybe they should start. From above, a curtain fluttered. Myra stood in the window, watching. Her face unreadable, but her eyes stayed fixed on Linda the entire time. That night, the security footage showed Troy standing in the alley behind Linda's garage, looking up at her back windows. He didn't touch anything. He didn't speak. But he stood there for a long, long time, hands in his pockets, like a man deciding between impulse and consequence. The new privacy fence went up in 3 days. Cedar boards, 8 feet high, no gaps, no lattice, no view. The crew worked with tight efficiency, their nail guns stuttering like thunder as they boxed in Linda's backyard with clean lines and steel-braced corners. By the time they finished, the fence stood like a quiet fortress, unapologetic, permanent, and entirely within code. Troy watched from his patio the entire time, arms folded, mouth a tight line. He didn't say a word to the crew, didn't storm over. But when the last post hole was filled and the contractor handed Linda the invoice, she could feel the heat of Troy's stare burning through the slats. By nightfall, retaliation bloomed in floodlights. 4 of them. High-powered, motion-activated LEDs installed along the eaves of Troy's roof pointed not at his own lawn, but directly into Linda's backyard, turning it into a glowing, overexposed stage every time a leaf fluttered. The first time they snapped on, Linda was bringing in laundry. The light blinded her so hard she dropped the basket. Every shirt, towel, and sock lit up like theater props under interrogation. Matt's voice was calm but clipped the next morning over the phone. That's targeted light pollution. Document the wattage, angle, and times they trigger. Take photos. Keep a log. I already started one, Linda said, opening the folder she'd labeled in black Sharpie, countermeasures. That weekend, Aubrey stormed across the grass in a hot pink tracksuit and designer flip-flops, carrying a glass of white wine at noon. Are you seriously filing complaints now? She barked, not even waiting for Linda to get off her front step. You think you're cute, harassing us with zoning nonsense? Linda set down her trowel and rose slowly. Your lights turn on every time my dog scratches himself. You built a damn prison fence. Aubrey gestured wildly. It makes the whole block look hostile. Linda glanced around the street. You're the only one complaining. We have rights, you know. Aubrey's voice cracked. We're not your enemies. Linda looked at her dead on. Then stop acting like it. Aubrey blinked, like she'd just been slapped with truth, and retreated without another word, spilling a little wine as she stomped back home. Later that day, Kara met Linda at the city office, a neat stack of forms clipped under her arm. She walked beside her like a lawyer in heels, purposeful, all the pleasantries drained out. You filing just for the lights? She asked as they stepped inside. No, Linda said. Lights, drainage, fencing violations, sidewalk encroachment, everything I can prove. Kara nodded once. You want me to walk it through committee? I want it on record, Linda said. For whatever comes next. Kara gave a small smile. That's the cleanest threat I've ever heard. It took less than 10 days for the first letter to arrive. Official, city seal. Folded tight in a windowed envelope, Linda read it twice, then folded it and slipped it into her countermeasures folder. The city of Glenfield has determined that the outdoor lighting fixtures installed on the property of 227 Whitley Drive are in violation of Code 14.6. Additionally, Runoff from recent patio modifications appears to be contributing to storm drain overload. The homeowner will be required to submit a drainage compliance plan within 30 days. Troy didn't react the first day. But by the third, he yanked down one of the lights in full view of Linda's camera. No gloves, no ladder. Just sheer rage and a pair of pliers. Linda didn't flinch. She simply noted the time in her log. The notices came on a Thursday morning, thin white paper taped crookedly to each tenant's door. 30-day notice to vacate. No cause, no apology, no contact number, just a P.O. box. Linda saw them flapping in the wind when she brought out her trash can. The upstairs curtain moved, and Myra's face appeared for a second, pale and angry. Downstairs, Jenna opened her door and ripped the paper down like it was a wasp nest. Troy stood across the street by his truck, hands on hips, sunglasses hiding his eyes but not his smirk. He didn't look at Linda, not directly, but his posture said everything. Checkmate. Linda walked over anyway. "You're trespassing," Troy called, smug. "I'm on public sidewalk," she replied evenly. "Not that you'd know the difference." That afternoon, Linda sat with Jenna and Myra at her kitchen table, a carafe of coffee between them. Jenna still had the notice clutched in her hand. It was crumpled now, the edges soft from her grip. Myra kept bouncing one leg under the table, arms folded tight across her chest. "They don't even have a reason," Jenna said, voice brittle. "We've paid on time, every month." "They don't need one," Myra muttered. "Month to month. He's just clearing us out so he can jack the rent or Airbnb it." Linda slid a business card across the table, matte black with white lettering. Community Legal Defense Network, Tenant Rights Unit. "They're pro bono," she said. "Call tonight. They'll file a response before the deadline." Jenna blinked. "You knew this would happen?" "I knew he'd try something," Linda said. "But you're not alone in this." By Monday, Matt himself was in her living room, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. He was at the dining table with a legal pad and 2 laptops open. Myra sat beside him, her toddler asleep in a car seat on the floor. Jenna paced near the window, phone pressed to her ear as she spoke to a paralegal. "Technically, he's the landlord," Matt said, writing rapidly. "But you have rights, especially with kids. We're filing for tenant protections under the new state law. It'll at least stall him." "Stall him?" Myra echoed. "Long enough to make it expensive for him to keep trying." Matt glanced at Linda. "You sure you want to cover their filing fees? It's not cheap." Linda nodded without hesitation. "Consider it an investment." Matt's pen paused. He gave her a long look. "In what?" "In this street," she said simply. That night, Jenna posted a photo of her notice on Facebook. Caption: "Landlord trying to evict 2 single moms without cause. We've done nothing wrong. Any resources?" By morning, the post had hundreds of shares, dozens of comments tagging local reporters, lawyers, neighborhood groups. Someone had even snapped a photo of Troy's truck and added it to the thread. Linda scrolled through the feed at her kitchen counter, sipping coffee. Doris read over her shoulder. "Looks like you kicked the anthill," Doris said, smirking. "Good," Linda murmured. Across the street, Aubrey's panic was visible even from the window. She paced their porch with her phone glued to her ear, talking fast, her free hand clutching her hair like she was trying to hold it on. Every so often she'd look toward Linda's house, then spin away, her voice rising high enough to carry. "Bad PR. Our groups are freaking out." "No, she's lying. This isn't harassment. It's just business." The floodlights were still down, the notices still taped to the doors of Troy's duplex like ugly warnings. But the narrative had shifted, and everyone could feel it. The inspector's name was Carl, and he looked like every retired contractor Linda had ever met. Stoop-shouldered, sun-leathered skin, clipboard in one hand and a Stanley thermos in the other. He wore a ball cap with a faded Union logo and nodded once when Linda met him at the curb. "You said 227 Whitley, right?" he asked, already glancing toward Troy's duplex like it had personally offended him. Linda walked beside him, arms crossed over her windbreaker. "That's the one. Work was done last spring. Gutted the back patio, added drainage lines, redid the upstairs bathroom. Maybe more. I've got photos." Carl smirked faintly. "Let me guess. No permits pulled." "Not a one." Typical. He didn't need a key. He didn't need access to the interior. All he needed was line of sight, and he took it all in. The angle of the patio slope, the gutter placement, the exposed wiring near the motion lights Troy had torn down in a fit, and the clear signs of plumbing modification visible from the alley side wall. "Shouldn't take long," Carl said, scribbling on his clipboard. "If they skipped permits, the county's gonna want to have a word, especially if they're dodging taxes." By the end of the following week, the county assessor's notice was delivered. It wasn't subtle. Large envelope, county seal, bold black font across the top. Property value adjustment, Glenfield County Assessor's Office. Linda watched from her porch as Troy ripped the envelope open right there in his driveway. His mouth moved as he scanned the letter, then stopped. Froze. Then the shouting started. $3,400 a year? He barked at the air, shaking the paper like it had personally betrayed him. For what? Drainage? That damn bathroom's not even finished. From behind the curtains, Doris snorted. What? He think cheating the taxman was a secret sport? 2 hours later, Aubrey was on Facebook. Her post was performative, vaguely spiritual, and soaked in self-pity. "It's a sad day when jealous neighbors start attacking homeowners for trying to improve their community. We've been nothing but generous and neighborly since moving here, and now we're being targeted because someone doesn't like seeing success next door. Glenfield used to be about kindness. Now it's lawsuits and petty city complaints. We're heartbroken." The comments trickled in, some from her friends, offering supportive emojis and "hang in there" platitudes. Then someone tagged Linda, and Linda, as always, was precise. She didn't rant. She didn't accuse. She posted a calm, factual comment that began with, "Hi Aubrey, just to clarify," followed by 3 linked PDFs from the Glenfield County website. The permit violations filed in 2023, the assessor's justification report for tax adjustment, the code violation summary for non-compliant outdoor lighting. She ended her comment with a single line. "Happy to talk directly if you'd prefer clarity over confusion." What followed wasn't a flame war, it was a landslide. Comments flooded in. Neighbors, local activists, a former city council member. A woman from the housing rights group Linda had quietly supported for years. They all showed up, not loud but firm, rational, measured. "You're not being targeted. You're being held accountable. This has nothing to do with success. It's about compliance and respect." Funny how the bad neighbor is the only one helping tenants stay housed. By morning, Aubrey had deleted her original post. Linda didn't gloat. She simply opened her laptop, archived a screenshot of the thread, and saved it to her digital folder labeled Whitley Records. Then she went outside, walked the perimeter of her backyard in her rubber boots, and checked the corner where runoff used to pool near the gate. Still dry, still sound. Doris leaned on the porch rail and raised her coffee mug. "You know, I think your roses are blooming bigger this year." Linda looked down at the hedge, thick with new buds. "They always do better when you cut them back hard." Doris gave a small nod. "Troy must be feeling real pruned." "He's not done," Linda said. "Not as a warning, just a fact." She tugged one stubborn weed from the ground and flicked it aside. "But neither am I." Troy didn't list the property on Zillow. He didn't use Redfin, or the MLS, or even Kara. Instead, he did what people with something to hide always do. he whispered. Private inquiries, off-market talk, texts to flippers he knew through a construction buddy, feelers put out through investment Facebook groups with phrases like motivated seller and no agent fees. By the second week of April, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of 227 Whitley. The man who stepped out had the telltale uniform of an under-the-radar buyer: mirrored sunglasses, a designer hoodie, clipboard, and silence. He didn't knock on doors, just took photos, walked the perimeter, measured the driveway slope with a little wheel, and nodded to himself like a man already picturing demo day. Linda watched from her upstairs window, jotting the time in a small leather-bound notebook she'd begun keeping separate from her legal files. Not everything needed to be admissible. Some things just needed to be remembered. 2 days later, Linda's third-party contractor filed a lien on the property. The basis: unresolved damages and unsafe conditions in a residential rental, resulting in legal consultation fees and temporary housing provisions. Technically, it came from the tenant's side. Jenna and Myra had signed off, but it was Linda who funded the filing and hired the paralegal to walk it through the court clerk's office. It wasn't illegal, it was just inconvenient. Which was exactly the point. By the time the buyer's agent pulled the public records on the property, the paper trail was already messy. Code violations, tax reassessment, a pending lien, a letter from the city about unresolved drainage and occupancy regulation discrepancies. The buyer walked. Not with a fight, just with silence. Troy didn't even get a call back. The black SUV never returned. Aubrey stormed into the backyard the next morning in a sports bra and joggers, phone pressed to her ear. He ghosted, she hissed to someone. Didn't even say why. I know it's because of that lien, and those stupid Facebook posts. That woman is poisoning everything. Linda was weeding her front beds at the time. She didn't stop. Just kept pulling dandelions from the soil as if Aubrey's voice were just another neighborhood irritant. That afternoon, a new sign appeared in Troy's yard. Not a "for sale." A freshly printed vinyl banner hanging from the porch rail. Coming soon, Glenfield Executive Stays, luxury short-term housing for professionals. Beneath it, in smaller font, furnished, flexible lease, weekly cleaning. Linda raised one eyebrow and snapped a photo. Matt responded to her text within minutes. Short-term rentals are restricted by city code. He'd need to file a conditional use permit and submit a guest occupancy plan. Want me to call the zoning board? Linda replied with a simple thumbs-up emoji. Within a week, Troy received his fourth certified letter of the season. This one bore the return address of Glenfield's Planning and Zoning Office. It was short, specific, brutal in its bureaucratic efficiency. Your property at 227 Whitley Drive does not meet the necessary criteria for operation as a short-term rental under Glenfield Municipal Code, paragraph 1612. Please cease and desist all advertisement and business preparation until further notice. Fines will be assessed if violations continue. Troy shredded the letter in the trash bin outside and kicked it halfway into the street. Linda retrieved the scraps later, carefully reassembling them at her kitchen table like a jigsaw puzzle, then scanning the pieces into her archive. She didn't laugh, but Doris did. The next HOA meeting was held at the local community center, one of those fluorescent-lit multi-purpose rooms with plastic chairs and stale coffee. It was lightly attended, just under 24 people. But all the key players were there. Linda, Kara, Doris, the Wilkinses from 2 doors down, and Aubrey. Troy didn't show, but Aubrey did. And she came in hot. They're targeting us, she snapped, barely 5 minutes into the open forum portion. There's a coordinated campaign of harassment going on, and you're all sitting here like it's normal. Like it's okay that people on this street are being punished for trying to make improvements. Several heads turned. Linda didn't speak. She sat calmly beside Doris, her folder of neatly labeled documents resting on her lap. You people think this is justice. Aubrey went on, pacing in front of the folding table like it was a courtroom. But it's bullying and slander, and I am so tired of pretending we're the villains. The room was quiet, not hostile, not warm either, just waiting. Aubrey's voice broke. We moved here to start over, to build something, and this street, her hand trembled, has turned us into monsters. Then, finally, she sat. Her hands were shaking, her eyes glossy. She looked down at the floor like it might offer some kind of exit hatch. No one said anything for a long while. And then Kara, always poised, always measured, cleared her throat. The board appreciates your feedback, she said gently. But I think what's being enforced here isn't personal. It's called accountability. Aubrey let out a strangled sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Linda didn't gloat. She didn't speak. She simply turned a page in her folder and waited for the meeting to continue. Troy had stretched himself too thin. It was obvious now, in the way his landscaping grew uneven, in the growing number of empty beer bottles visible through the side window of his truck, and in the notices that started arriving in unbranded envelopes instead of certified ones. First came the missed call from a bank Linda didn't recognize, then a voicemail with no name, just a case number. Then, finally, a conversation Doris overheard from her porch. Troy yelling into the phone, pacing back and forth, using the word mistake 3 times in under a minute. That was when Linda knew. He was missing payments. Probably not on the Whitley property. He couldn't afford to. But somewhere else. Somewhere he thought no one would notice. She found it 2 days later. A triplex over on Morgan Street. Bought under an LLC registered to an address in Kansas, but the paper trail led back to Troy's name. It had been his backup investment. He bragged about it once at a neighborhood BBQ, back when he thought Linda wasn't listening. Now it was unraveling, and she had receipts. The envelope Linda mailed was a single-page packet, printed neatly on her home office printer, with tabs marked for quick reference. Inside, a copy of the lien on Whitley, a summary of active complaints, and the city's formal violation notices, all neatly organized and addressed to the mortgage lender of the Morgan Street property. A week later, she got a call from Matt. "You'll want to hear this," he said, barely concealing the grin in his voice. "I just got word. His lender froze the financing on a pending sale." Linda exhaled slowly. "Which one?" "Morgan Street. Buyer got cold feet after the freeze. Backed out. Apparently the bank's conducting a risk reevaluation on Troy's entire portfolio." She sat back in her chair, eyes narrowing at the word. "Risk," Matt chuckled. "That's code for, this man is on fire and we don't want the smoke." What came next wasn't celebratory. It was procedural. Matt drafted a formal complaint and submitted it on Linda's behalf. Retaliation, harassment, and fraud. A thick, sterile document loaded with dates, screenshots, notarized affidavits from tenants, copies of every anonymous letter, camera footage, social media documentation, and more. Linda signed the final version at Matt's office with a calm hand. "I'm not asking for punishment," she said, capping the pen. "I'm asking for limits." "You're getting both," Matt replied. Eventually. Kara showed up at Linda's porch a week later in flats and a ponytail. No clipboard, no makeup, no hustle in her step. "Just came from the state board," she said, handing Linda a folded piece of paper. "Thought you'd want to see it." Linda unfolded it slowly. It was a printout from the Department of Real Estate Licensing. One line highlighted in yellow. License status. Under review for ethics violations. Below it, a brief note. Complaint pending regarding non-disclosure of material legal issues during transaction attempt. Linda looked up. "How?" Kara shrugged. "I may have answered a few questions honestly when the board called. He listed me as a former agent of record on a couple deals. They were curious. Linda let the paper fall closed in her hand. Will he lose the license? Kara nodded. If not now, soon. Even if he doesn't, his name's flagged in the system. You'd be surprised how many agents refuse to work with someone whose file lights up like a crime scene. By the following Monday, Aubrey was gone from Facebook. Then Instagram. Then Twitter. Every post deleted. Every profile vanished. The community groups she once dominated with posts about resale value and curated charm now moved on without her, posting dog photos, bake sale announcements, and a fundraiser for Jenna's daughter's after-school program, shared by Linda. Doris noticed it first. She ghosted herself, she said over coffee, watching the neighborhood unfold from the porch. Like one of those influencers who suddenly finds out real life's not sponsored. Linda gave a small smile. Some people mistake silence for surrender. Doris nodded. Not you, though. No, Linda said. Not anymore. Later that week, Linda received an envelope, hand-delivered, no return address. But the handwriting was familiar. Overly precise, anxious. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No threats, no accusations. Just a short, messy line. We didn't come here to hurt people. It wasn't signed, but the name didn't need to be there. Linda folded it once, gently, and placed it in the very back of her file drawer, behind tax records and city filings and permit receipts. Not forgotten. Not forgiven. Just placed exactly where it belonged. Then she shut the drawer and turned back toward her garden. The first hydrangeas of the season were just starting to bloom. She saw him before he knocked. Linda had been trimming back the hydrangeas by the porch rail, her gardening gloves still damp with morning dew, when a dull-colored pickup pulled up too slow and too deliberate. It didn't belong here. Not anymore. Not since the neighborhood started noticing. Troy climbed out, his posture stiffer than usual, like he was wearing a jacket lined with nails. He was holding 2 coffee cups, one from a gas station, the other a sleek branded cup that didn't belong in his world anymore. His smile was small and too sharp around the edges. He stepped onto her porch and knocked once, then paused and knocked again, like maybe he hadn't heard it right the first time. Linda opened the screen but left the door frame between them. Tried to guess what you'd like, he said, holding up the cups like offerings. Figured I'd cover both ends of the spectrum. I already brewed mine, she replied flatly, wiping her hands on her apron. Troy chuckled softly, eyes scanning the flower beds. I always figured you'd be good at this. Landscaping. Making things grow. I'm better at cutting things back, she said. You've got 2 minutes. He hesitated, then leaned against the porch rail and set both cups down like they'd been invited. I've been thinking, he began, smoothing the front of his shirt. Maybe things escalated too fast. I came on too strong. But we're neighbors, Linda. We've got shared interests here. And this doesn't have to be personal. Linda raised an eyebrow. You threatened my tenants, tried to evict single mothers and ignored code violations for over a year. I made a few miscalculations, sure, Troy said quickly. But you've made your point, loud and clear. The triplex deal's dead, my lenders are spooked, and my inbox looks like a crime scene. He paused, as if waiting for sympathy. Linda offered none. I came to say maybe it's time we both pull back, he continued. There's no need to keep this going. You've done your damage. I get it. Linda disappeared into the house without a word. Troy blinked, caught off guard, but she returned less than 10 seconds later with a manila folder in hand. She offered it like a menu. Then you'll want to review this. He took it slowly, flipping through the pages, and the facade cracked by the third one. Each page was labeled, dated, and categorized. Citations, fine schedules, code violations, before and after photos of units he swore had been fully upgraded, sworn tenant statements, copies of every harassment complaint he thought no one had the courage to file. "This is overkill," he muttered, though his voice had lost volume. "It's obsessive." "No," Linda said, her voice even. "It's accurate, and overdue." Troy slammed the folder shut. "You did all this just to what? Ruin me? Win?" Linda's eyes stayed locked on his, calm, clean. "I didn't do this to win," she said. "I did this to stop you." Troy exhaled sharply, jaw tight. He set the folder down like it burned. "You think you're better than me?" he asked, voice colder now. "I think I learned what happens when people like you go unchecked," she replied. "I let it slide once. I don't plan to again." She reached behind her, pulled a crisp white envelope from her back pocket, and handed it over. He looked at it, suspicious. "What is it this time?" he asked. "Rent increase notices," she said. "Filed yesterday. Effective next month for every tenant still under your management. Adjusted for local zoning and your failure to meet the city's repair compliance." He tore it open, eyes darting across the page. "You can't raise them this much." "I can," Linda said. "And I did. It's not retaliation, it's math. You've been undercharging to avoid scrutiny. That ends today." "This is harassment," he snapped. "You're pushing too far." Linda stepped closer, her voice still calm, but firm enough to snap a limb in two. "You don't get to play victim in a game you started, Troy." For the first time, he was quiet. The porch seemed to hum with late morning heat. A bee hovered near the railing, then disappeared into the blossoms. Down the street, a child's laughter carried through the air. "This neighborhood is changing," Linda said. "Not because of you, but because people stopped being afraid of you." Troy finally picked up the folder again, this time with less bluster. "You think this is the end?" "I think it's the beginning," she said. "For the people you pushed out. For the ones still here." He narrowed his eyes. "You think I'm done?" "I think you're out of tricks." She stepped back toward the door. "And if you're not, I'm not either." Then she looked down at the cups. "Next time, skip the coffee. Bribes are for people who still have options." She closed the door gently, not slamming it, because a slammed door implied anger. This was strategy. Finality. She turned the deadbolt and walked back into the kitchen, where her real coffee sat. Lukewarm, but honest. On the counter, her phone buzzed. "Kara. You're gonna want to see what just got posted to the landlord forums." Linda opened the message. A screenshot loaded. A thread titled, "Do not co-invest with Troy Hallbridge, red flag file attached." Below it, a PDF compiled by an anonymous user, most likely Kara, detailing failed inspections, tenant complaints, court notices, and licensing flags. Every reply below it told the same story in different words. "Not worth the headache. Won't work with him again." Linda set the phone down. No smile, just stillness. Outside, she heard Troy's truck start, but it idled longer than usual, like he couldn't quite bring himself to shift into gear. Then it finally rolled away, slower than it came. Linda watched from the kitchen window, eyes steady, one hand still wrapped around her mug. The flowers outside were blooming fast now, but the roots, those had been there all along. The notices went out on a Thursday, typed in clear, professional font, mailed with tracking numbers. No fluff, no legalese, just a precise, city-backed statement of fact. Rents on the remaining units of the Whitley duplex were increasing by 18%, effective in 30 days. Linda had walked them to the post office herself. No third-party services, no online platforms. It was personal now, not petty. And it was legal. The city's zoning board had confirmed it. The comparative rental market data supported it. Troy's neglect had kept those numbers artificially low for too long, and Linda knew how to present facts like they weren't weapons, even when they were. By Monday, the phone calls started. Not angry, not frantic, warm. "Miss Linda, just got the notice," said Elise, the single mom in Unit A, voice quiet over speakerphone. "I figured it was coming, but I wanted to say thank you." Linda paused. "For what?" "For being the first landlord in my adult life who told the truth out loud, and for getting that busted heater replaced in January. That wasn't your job, but you did it anyway." "You deserve to be treated like you matter," Linda said, matter of fact. "I'll be out in 2 weeks," Elise said, with an edge of sadness. "Found a spot near my sister's. It's more expensive, but it doesn't come with drywall fungus and panic attacks." Linda nodded to herself. "If you need a letter of reference, I'll write one today." "Already emailed the leasing office," Elise replied. "Told them you saved the place from burning down, metaphorically and literally." By the end of the week, all the units were empty, not because they were priced out, but because, for the first time, they had leverage, freedom. Doris helped Linda sort keys into an envelope on the kitchen table. "Whole place feels lighter," she said, holding up one set. "Like somebody finally opened a window in a stale house." Linda smiled faintly. "I think it just remembered how to breathe." She didn't rush to list the units. She let the silence sit for a week. Walked through each one slowly, clipboard in hand, making notes with a sense of precision that bordered on surgical. Rotten pipes, worn locks, old smoke alarms half hanging from the ceilings. Troy had never fixed these things because he never thought he'd have to. Linda replaced every last one. By the second week, she had plumbers reroute the main line, contractors patch and seal cracks behind the kitchen cabinets, and a security technician install a smart lock system that alerted tenants if the back door hadn't latched properly. Each unit got fresh paint, an air purifier, and new cabinet handles that actually matched. Matt stopped by during one of the walkthroughs. "You planning to flip this?" he asked, holding the door open with his foot. "I'm planning to make it livable," Linda replied. "Not just survivable." He gave a small nod, hands in his pockets. "In that case, I've got an update for you." He handed her a printed judgment, civil court, dated and signed. Linda scanned the page. Troy Hallbridge ordered to pay $9,184.22 in tenant restitution and rental revenue violations. Linda ran her thumb along the edge of the paper. "Did he show up?" she asked. Matt smirked. "Nope." Sent a statement through his lawyer claiming financial hardship due to an aggressive neighborhood smear campaign. Judge wasn't impressed. "What happens now?" Matt shrugged. "They'll garnish his next escrow release. He'll feel it. Not all at once, but like a leak in a boat that doesn't stop." The next week, Linda handed a key to someone who hadn't expected one. Her niece Shauna moved into Unit A, recent college grad, tired of paying $2,400 a month for an apartment with peeling paint and no hot water after midnight. She stood in the living room with her arms wide open. "This place smells like actual soap. Are you sure it's not cursed?" "Cursed buildings don't get new plumbing," Linda said, tossing her a set of labeled keys. Shauna grinned. "You're a damn myth around my friend group, you know that. They think you're like some kind of quiet avenger for renters." Linda raised an eyebrow. "I'm not looking for a cape, just peace." On Sunday, Kara invited her out for brunch. A real one, tablecloths, outdoor patio, cold mimosas in fluted glasses. "I was hoping you'd say yes," Kara said, raising her glass after the first bite of French toast, "because this toast has a purpose." Linda smirked. "Oh boy." "To being petty," Kara said, tilting her glass gently. "And powerful." Linda clinked her glass against Kara's. "You forgot prepared." "Always implied." They laughed. Not the brittle kind that comes after a fight, but the soft, tired kind that means something is over, and the people who endured it are still standing. Later, Kara slid her phone across the table. I didn't want to ruin the toast, she said, but you should see this. Linda glanced down. A photo of Troy, grainy and zoomed in, from the city courthouse steps, alone, slumped, holding a box under one arm. A caption below it. Local landlord files dissolution of 3 LLCs after portfolio devaluation. Linda didn't speak. She didn't need to. But her eyes lingered on the box in his arms. It looked small. Too small for everything he once bragged about owning. When she looked back up, Kara was watching her closely. You good? Kara asked. Linda stirred her coffee slowly. I'm thinking, she said, about how long it takes for someone to fall, and still not realize they've hit the ground. Kara sat back, sunglasses glinting in the late morning sun. Trust me, she said. He'll feel the landing soon enough. Linda looked past the sidewalk cafe, toward the skyline where cranes dotted the edges of new development. Then her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Just one line of text. You win. You happy now? She didn't answer. Not yet. She just turned the phone face down and reached for her drink again. Some messages were better left unanswered. Others, they were just the beginning. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thick paper. City seal stamped in faint gold at the top, folded into thirds like a government prayer. Linda unfolded it slowly, careful not to let the corners tear. Subject: formal complaint. Residential nuisance and harassment allegations filed by Mr. Troy Hallbridge. Nature of complaint: persistent noise violations, targeted property harassment, and use of community influence to create a hostile living environment. She read the page twice, then a third time. Then, calmly, she placed it on her desk, opened her filing drawer, and pulled out a black USB stick labeled simply, Doorbell, Backlot, Street Cam, July-September. Linda wasn't surprised. She was just disappointed by how sloppy he'd gotten. Matt came by that afternoon. She handed him the USB like a passing of keys. That fast? He asked. I timestamp everything, Linda said, and Doris has been keeping a log since May. Matt chuckled. Remind me never to cross you. The footage spoke for itself. Linda gardening quietly at 7 a.m., while Troy's complaint claimed yard machine noise before dawn. A community BBQ in broad daylight with children playing in the yard, labeled by Troy as illegal gathering and disturbance. Tenants giving testimony on camera about how Troy used to idle his truck outside their windows at 2 a.m., claiming he was monitoring property integrity. Matt compiled the footage, the logs, the neighbor statements, including one from Kara, who'd notarized her declaration at a bank, and filed a rebuttal with the city within 48 hours. By Friday, the response came in. Complaint dismissed. Filing party found in breach of Municipal Code 12-149, false reporting, fine assessed $2,500, additional citation, misuse of municipal complaint process for personal retaliation. Linda didn't smile when she read it. She just let the weight of it settle behind her collarbone. Quiet victories were still victories, but the fallout wasn't done. 2 weeks later, Doris called from her porch, her voice low, almost cautious. Don't mean to stir the pot, hon, but Aubrey's been packing boxes. Linda looked up from her garden ledger. Packing? Saw her haul 3 wardrobe boxes into her car this morning, left with a suitcase in the front seat and the kid in the back. She hasn't been back since. It wasn't hard to confirm. Aubrey's Instagram, what was left of it, had been wiped of family photos. A realtor tag showed up on her stories. A listing on Zillow went live 3 days later. 3-bedroom single-family home in transitional area. Needs cosmetic updates. Sold as is. Linda stared at the screen for a long time, not in disbelief, just tracking the pattern. Troy had finally run out of people to blame. And now, he was leaving too. The house sat empty for a week. Then 2. A stack of takeout flyers gathered on the stoop. A broken gutter whistled in the wind. The porch light flicked on every night, automatic and oblivious. When the city posted the auction notice, Linda read it without ceremony. Foreclosure auction, 1131 Whitley Lane. Starting bid, $86,000. Condition, as is, vacant. She read it once more, just to be sure. Then she made 2 phone calls. One to Matt, the other to a trust attorney she hadn't spoken to in years. When the bidding opened 3 weeks later, Linda didn't attend in person. She had no reason to. The trust submitted its bid online, clean, cash-backed, and anonymous. There was no competition. Not anymore. When the gavel fell virtually, it did so with anticlimax. Sold. Linda received confirmation by email. Property awarded to Stone Cove Revocable Trust. Shauna glanced at the screen when Linda set the phone down. Is that what I think it is? Linda nodded. It's just a house now. No more hauntings? Shauna asked, half joking. Only the ones you let stay. She didn't rush to announce the purchase. She didn't post about it. She didn't walk through the front door until a week after the sale closed, and even then, she did it alone. The place smelled like drywall dust and quiet regret. Linda moved through it slowly. The worn carpet, the brittle baseboards, the door with the missing doorknob, ripped out during one of Troy's late-night temper tantrums, according to Doris. She reached the living room. There, taped to the inside of the window, was a handwritten note on college-ruled paper. Blue ink. Crooked handwriting. I didn't sign up for this. I hope you never understand what it's like to lose everything. It wasn't signed, but Linda folded it once, then again, and slipped it into her coat pocket. She stood in the silence for a long time. No tenants, no legal filings, no cameras, just wood and walls and old mistakes. A house is only a weapon when someone refuses to let go of it. Linda turned to leave, her boots echoing lightly against the old tile. When she reached the porch, she paused and looked back. Not with nostalgia, with precision. This wasn't a trophy. It was a lesson. And now, it was hers. But down the street, someone was watching from behind tinted windows. A black SUV idled at the corner. Engine. Running. Lights off. Linda couldn't see the driver's face, but she could feel the weight of someone too proud to leave and too bitter to return. She stepped off the porch. Didn't stop walking. Some ghosts had to follow before they faded. And this one? It wasn't done haunting yet. The sound of hammers returned to Whitley Lane, but this time, it was different. No cheap flip crews working in frantic silence. No dented trucks blocking driveways or radios blasting classic rock at 7 a.m. The work on Linda's properties moved at a steady hum, measured, local, and intentional. 1 crew, 2 men, a retired electrician from down the block, and his nephew learning the trade. No rush, no press releases, just restoration. The duplex came first. New storm windows, refinished floors, a full tear-out of the cracked tile in the kitchen, replaced with soft slate gray. Linda painted the porch rail herself, deep navy, with white trim that caught the late afternoon sun like a promise. Across the street, the former Hallbridge home stood quieter than it had in years. Linda didn't advertise the ownership, but everyone knew. Word had a way of traveling when no one tried to stop it. Doris showed up with a folding table and a binder labeled Neighborhood Accountability Plan. I figured now's as good a time as any, she said, unfolding a hand-drawn map of the block. Linda set down her gloves. For what? Block watch, Doris said. Not the kind with paranoia and whistles, the kind where we knock on each other's doors before someone has to knock on ours. They held the first meeting in Linda's backyard. 7 chairs, iced tea, store-bought cookies. No agenda, just stories. About what had been tolerated, about what wouldn't be again. Shauna printed a flyer and passed it around at the farmer's market. By the next week, they had 20 people. By the end of the month, Kara had created a Google Calendar. "It's not just safety," Kara said, pulling her laptop closer one evening. "It's visibility. That's how the bad ones operate. They count on people being isolated or too tired to care." Linda nodded, but her eyes stayed on the screen as Kara clicked open a draft. A blog post. Title: "The Landlord You Don't Know Next Door." Author: anonymous. It read like fiction, but every word hummed with truth, down to the anonymous letters, the camera footage, the retaliatory complaints, and the late-night SUV parked across the street. "It's going up tomorrow," Kara said. "You cool with that?" Linda didn't answer right away. She looked out the window. The porch light on the old Hallbridge place flicked on automatically at dusk, still set to Troy's old timer. It illuminated nothing but brick. "Let it run," she said quietly. By Sunday night, the post had spread, first among real estate Facebook groups, then legal subreddits, then a TikTok stitch by a housing attorney who read the entire thing out loud while sipping tea. The next morning, Kara's inbox was full. Stories from across the country, photos, screenshots, PDFs. They all started the same way. "I thought I was alone." Meanwhile, life on Whitley moved forward. Shauna planted lavender in the shared front garden. Doris scheduled rotating porch shifts. The single moms who once lived in the duplex came by with flowers and homemade cookies, each of them staying just long enough to say the same quiet thing: "Thank you." One of them hugged Linda longer than the rest. Not because she had to, but because it felt like closure. Linda stood on the front steps after they left, watering can in one hand, her phone in the other. The screen lit up again. Blocked number. No voicemail this time. No name. No threat. Just the echo of a pattern refusing to die. She stared at it, then hit screenshot, forwarded it to Matt, and dropped her phone into the pocket of her sweater. An hour later, he called. "Already filed the cease and desist," he said, "and I flagged the number for trace if it happens again." "Thanks." "I also added a clause to the trust," he added. "If Troy tries to buy back through a third party, he'll hit a wall of steel." Linda exhaled. "He's still circling, isn't he?" "Oh yeah," Matt said, "like a vulture who doesn't know the animal's already buried." Linda looked out at the street. The new street. The one she took back. Then her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Kara. "You might want to see this." A screenshot. A comment from the blog's post. She didn't just burn his house down. She built something in the ashes. Linda stared at it for a long moment. Then she did something she hadn't done in months. She hit reply. Not ashes. Foundation. And outside, the porch lights clicked on. This time, they stayed on. Linda didn't need to check the forecast anymore. She knew the sky by scent, by the shift in pressure before a storm, the change in how the breeze lifted the edge of the porch curtain. Morning sun pooled across her garden like a quiet reward. The hydrangeas were full now, the blues deepening into violet. The soil smelled rich, the kind of healthy that only came from real work. She sat on her porch swing with a mason jar of sweet tea sweating in her hand, the ice clinking gently as she rocked. A crossword rested on her lap. She wasn't solving it, just liked having it near. Across the street, both houses stood still and solid. No trash in the yard, no late-night engines idling. Just tenants who smiled when they passed, who waved when they saw her, who paid rent on time because they had reason to care. Shauna had gotten a job with a nonprofit in the city and now split the upstairs unit with her girlfriend. They turned the old breakfast nook into a study, installed bookshelves with their own hands. They baked on Sundays. Bread mostly. The scent drifted across the lawn like memory. The downstairs tenant, Miguel, had built a planter box beneath the kitchen window and filled it with basil, rosemary, and lemon thyme. He left snippings on Linda's porch every other Friday with a thank you note on post-it paper. No fuss, no expectations. Stability wasn't flashy. It was sacred. The property value had doubled in 18 months. Not because of speculation, but because peace made a place worth investing in. Linda didn't owe a cent to anyone now. No mortgage, no business loans, no silence swallowed to keep a deal alive. It was all hers, paid for in documents, sweat, and the kind of discipline that didn't come from spite, but grew from surviving it. On the side fence, Doris knelt in her wide-brimmed sun hat, tending to a row of newly planted rose bushes, deep red, thick-stemmed. "These are called rebels," she said, without looking up. "The nursery guy said they thrive in bad soil." Linda smiled. "Fitting." Doris nodded once. "Thought so too." A car pulled into the driveway. Matt stepped out in a short-sleeve button-down and sunglasses, a thick manila folder tucked under one arm. He didn't knock, just walked around to the porch and handed it to her like a housewarming gift. "What's this?" Linda asked. "Final papers," he said. "The trust is officially closed. The deed's fully clean. And you, my friend, are a certified pain in the ass to bad men everywhere." Linda laughed softly, but didn't open the folder. "Not yet." "Thank you," she said. Matt gave her a quick salute with 2 fingers. "You did the hard part." She glanced down at the folder again, then toward the fence where Doris was adjusting a trellis for the climbing roses. "No," Linda said. "I just stopped pretending I couldn't." As Matt left, Kara arrived, sunglasses in one hand, iced coffee in the other. She looked windblown, energized. "I have news," she said, barely giving Linda time to put her tea down. Linda raised an eyebrow. "You're not pregnant, are you?" Kara snorted. "Worse. The blog's getting optioned." Linda blinked. "Optioned?" "Local production company," Kara said, grinning like a kid at a carnival. "Wants to do a limited series, all fictionalized, of course, but based on the story. They want to call it Stone Fence." Linda's laugh caught her off guard, sharper and louder than she intended. Doris looked up from the rose bushes, smirking. "Let me guess," Doris called. "You get casting approval?" "I better," Kara replied, eyes twinkling. Linda shook her head. "You do realize you're becoming the very influencer you used to make fun of." "Please," Kara said. "I'm chaos with a camera, totally different species." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, the sun warming their shoulders, the wind pushing gently against the porch, like a sigh of relief. Down the street, a moving van pulled up to a new rental. The family inside looked young, mid-30s, with a toddler clinging to one pant leg and a dog barking joyfully from the open hatchback. Linda watched them for a long moment. The father waved. She waved back. Life didn't knock on the door here anymore. It moved in, quietly, with boxes and cautious hope. As the sun dipped lower, Linda reached for her tea again. The porch lights clicked on. They no longer flickered. They burned steady, just like the street they watched. And when Shauna returned from work that night and asked, offhandedly, if Linda ever regretted how far she'd gone, Linda didn't answer right away. She just looked out across Whitley Lane and said, calm and clear, "I didn't raise my voice. I raised the rent, the fence, and the standard." Then she turned back to the garden, and the world kept blooming.